Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, welcome. This is the Hostos Student Leadership Academy Friday Ambassador Workshop Series, and we are in October, the 21st, not yet to Halloween. We got a really warm day today for some reason. I don't know where it came out of, but it's nice. So some people may be arriving late because they were, getting a suntan or something. And we have with us today the incredible Lawrese Brown, who has been working with us for probably something in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 years, I think.
Yes.
And Lawrese has a skill set that's extraordinary and has always come back to give the members of our group a great deal of knowledge and to feed you from her experience. So I'm not going to belabor the point anymore. I'm not going to hold up and speak anymore. I'm going to turn this over to Lawrese, and she will take you on a journey. So, Lawrese
All right.
Brown.
Thank you for that, Jason. And yes, Hostos is one of the first schools that I started working with. So it's always a pleasure to get the email from Jason to come back. So looking forward to working with you all again today. And our topic is speak up, how to combat burnout, stay motivated, and communicate your needs directly. So a little bit of context to why I do this work and what I have learned while doing this work. So my mother is a retired teacher of 31 years from the Newark Public Schools. So I'm born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, and my father worked as an identification officer for the Newark Police Department. This is important because one of the things we'll talk about today is how expectations play into our whether or not we are disappointed or surprised. And so my parents always told me that if I worked hard and went to school, I would be successful. So I founded Brown Coaching and Consulting in 2014 to teach students the skills they needed for the workforce, because I graduated in 2010 and I felt like I know I did really well in school. I graduated magna cum laude. I was my school's first Black student commencement speaker. And still when I transitioned to work, I was like, this was not what you all told me it would be. So in 2015, I also began teaching professionals workplace skills through improv-based communication training. Now, this is important because often sometimes when we hear from, when students hear from professionals, they're not professionals in an industry that they've worked in. And so my work as a communications trainer and teacher for professionals means that I've worked with professionals across a variety of jobs and industries. So philanthropy, political science, I've worked with startups, I've worked with more established organizations, I worked with higher education institutions, and I've worked with people in finance. So I can speak directly to the experiences that they have and what they are responsible for in their job. In 2018, I changed the name to C-Track Training, which is what the company goes by now, because we focused on being the bridge with providing employees information. So students, we help you all prepare for the job that you want, and employees, we help you advance on the job that you have through training, coaching, and speaking. So now it's 2022, and as Jason mentioned, what I always aim to do is bring the most up-to-date quality information and knowledge so that you all can find real-life solutions for the scenarios that you face. So what we're going to do is I'm going to first start with what I want you, or what you will walk away with. But I also want you to know at any time I pay attention to the chat. So if you have a question, please drop it in there and I'll make sure that I get to it. All right, so any educator focuses on outcomes. And so what you will be able to do as the result of attending this workshop is better express you and your team members' goals. I know this is a leadership. I know you all are leaders. And so I not only want you to feel more confident expressing yourself, but also the goals of your team members. You'll be able to translate your leadership and program experiences into workplace skills and abilities. And also you will learn how to foster belonging among the members of your group, right? Each of you has a motivation, which we'll speak to, which is like a superpower or a unique ability. And each of you will foster belonging in your group in a different way. Any questions before we jump into the workshop? No? All right. All right. So here's my question to each of you before we go even a step further. Setting expectations. Do you say what you mean? So can you all give a thumbs up or write a yes in the chat if you are someone who says exactly what you mean? All right. Right, Sashi? It's sometimes, right? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Okay, we have yeses, some thumbs up. All right, Sheridan, I like that you said, I think I do, because after we go through each of these, you'll get a chance to see if there are some things you do that prevent you from saying what you really mean. Okay, not all the time. And again, it's good, we have a range, right? Sometimes we think, the purpose of this activity is that we'll see how clearly we communicate and how important that is to setting expectations. So let's keep going. All right. So the second question that's going to frame the activity we work on is, have you ever been disappointed? So I want you to answer that in the chat, or again, you can give a thumbs up. Have you ever been disappointed? Yes. Now, I told you all, as you all write in the chat, I'm going to give you all some insight on why I was a little disappointed. So as I noted, my parents told me that if I worked really hard at school, with my academics, I would be successful at life. So again, as I told you, I was a graduate fellow, I had an on-campus PR internship, an on-campus job, kept my grades high, was the first Black student commencement speaker in my college's 175-year history at the time. And I was disappointed to know that all that didn't equal the exact job that I want. So my question to you all, and someone can come off mute for this, what causes us to feel disappointment? Because all of you all have noted that you felt disappointment before. What is it that makes us feel disappointed?
I'll speak. I feel disappointed when, like, if I had a goal and I didn't achieve it, or if something's not going the way that I expected it to have gone.
Exactly. Sashi, am I saying your name right?
Sashi, yep.
Sashi, that's exactly it, right? We had a goal, we didn't reach it. It's expectations that cause disappointment. Have you all ever said that was overhyped? You ever said that to yourself? Like somebody hyped that up too much. You ever said that? That means you had an expectation for what it would be and it didn't meet those expectations, right? Have you ever heard, or have you ever said to yourself, oh, you know what, that actually wasn't too bad. That was better than I thought. You ever said that? Anybody ever said that? Okay, both of those are examples of how expectations frames our experience. So as Sashi said, we're disappointed when we feel like this falls short, right? When something falls short of what we were told. Now, this is important because a lot of what we're focused on today is speaking up and how you all can do that, and also play to your strengths to avoid burnout. So we're disappointed when what someone says falls short of what we experience, or when what we say what we say and what we want falls short of what we experience. We use the information leaders give us to guide our hopes and decisions. And I'm using that because all of you all here are leaders. And so this is important because remember, one of the outcomes is you expressing yourself more openly, but also expressing your team's goals. You're accountable for advocating to your team, but first you have to see, are you comfortable advocating for yourself? So who here, right? This is the third question. First question that I asked you all was, do you say what you really mean? Second question was, have you ever been disappointed? Third question, are you a direct communicator? Would you consider yourself a direct communicator? And as you see, I have right here, being direct is not the same as being aggressive. So it goes back to that question, do you say what you really mean? Who here would say, yep, you know what? All right, I like that. Amoy said, you know what, through writing. Okay, when it comes in handy, right? Yes, yes, okay. All right, so this next activity is going to focus on things that cause us not to directly communicate. And I'm gonna ask each of you to answer what you would do when placed within this scenario. You ready? All right, so let's go back to that very first question, which is also connected to the question of being a direct communicator. If you aren't a direct communicator, here are 3 reasons you aren't saying what you mean. And again, we're tying this all back together, why you're also unable to set clear expectations. Because as Sashi said so clearly, expectations happen when we fall short of our goals, or we feel like we're not meeting, or something doesn't meet our expectations, right? The expectations, especially others give us. And each of you is accountable for giving expectations as a leader. So these are 3 reasons you aren't saying what you mean. All right, so here's the scenario. Your group uses the conference room for their weekly meeting, and you allow the group members to bring dinner. At the end of every meeting, you emphasize cleaning up. The same 2 people ignore you. They have a consistent pattern of leaving their leftover food on the table and crumbled papers near the seating. Now, I'm gonna give you all a moment. I know everybody learns and processes differently. I read that out loud, but I wanna give you all a moment to read that also to yourself. And actually, if you have a preference for me not reading out loud and just reading it to yourself, we can do that too. Now, here's what you said as a response to the scenario, right? Remember, you're a leader. As you are at Hostos, you're also a leader in each of these scenarios. So this is what you say. Hey, everyone, we're having a problem with people cleaning up after themselves. It's really been a mess lately. Now, my question to you all, is that clear and direct communication? All right, Amoy said no. No, that's passive aggressive, right? Right, and we're going to talk more about why. All right, and let's talk a little bit, and let's talk specifically about why this happens, right? Because we want practical, grounded advice, especially for people who said, you know what, I'm not always direct. Or if you are direct, you can, through each of these scenarios, you'll see some of the patterns that you don't fall into that help you be a direct communicator. So here's what I want you all to, so for those of you who said this is not direct, you are correct, right? And the specific reason why that this is passive aggressive is because this person is you saying this, right? Hey, everyone, we're having a problem with people cleaning up after themselves. It's really been a mess. It's skirting the issue. And now skirting the issue happens when you use ambiguous words so the listener doesn't know who's accountable, right? Anybody here have siblings? And we'll talk more about how you'll know when you're skirting the issue. Anybody here have siblings? And if you do have siblings, then you'll notice that what parents or caregivers always do is they'll be like, you all did this. And you'll be like, what do you mean you all did this? I didn't do this, right? You talking to him, or you talking to her, or you talking to them, right? And so this is something that's common when people want everyone, right? When they're like, you all need to do this, or you all messed up, or you, and you're like, it's not you all, right? Name the person, give accountability to the person. That's an example of ambiguity and skirting the issue. Now, what I always like to do is give an example of what is more direct communication, because the focus on this activity is how do we help you all advocate for yourselves and so say what you really mean. So, hi, right, here's an example. Hi, blank. I noticed that when you leave the conference room, there's food left on the table and papers near your seat. Everyone is accountable for cleaning up in their area, and it's important you do your part to keep the communal space clean. Now, everybody uses different language, right? Skirting the issue doesn't mean you have to address it like this. So would anyone like to share, if we go back to this scenario, how they would address it, right? What language would you use? What would you say? Yes, Suprina, right? Grandmothers do that, right? Everybody do this. Remember, the scenario is you're at a conference room for a weekly meeting and you allow the group members to eat dinner, but the rule is everyone has to clean up after themselves, and this group consistently does it, right? Emphasis on consistently. How do we get away from the ambiguity? There's an example here, but would anyone else add something or say something differently? And you can unmute yourself or you can write it in the chat. All right, so everyone's comfortable with this one?
Okay. I think, I don't know, me being me, I feel like I was, after maybe the first week, 2 weeks, I'd probably be like, okay. And then maybe on that third week, I'd look at them, watch them leave it, and then like go up to them and say, excuse me, was you sitting there? This your stuff? All right, well, slavery is over. I'm not your man, I'm not your slave. Can you clean up after yourself? Thank you. I don't know, that's how I am.
That's you. And that's exactly, but what you did there, Sabrina, which first of all, thank you for doing that. What you did with that language, right? Like, were you sitting there? That's what we're talking about, accountability, right? There, you're in that specific, there's a specific example, you're holding them accountable, and you're saying, you have to clean that up. That's what you want. So you're not just saying, hey, everyone, it's a mess, we got to clean it up. You're saying, this is your mess. You now are accountable for cleaning up. And that's what we mean by not skirting the issue. So I thank you for doing that in your voice and honoring who you are, because that's what this is about, right? Each of us is going to do it differently, but you showed that you did it without skirting the issue. Awesome. All right. So if you're looking for a sign, right? So for those of you who said that you were indirect communicators, right? That maybe sometimes you were, I want you to know when you're about to skirt the issue so you can stop yourself. So here's something to know. If you are about to say, if you won't say you or I, because you don't want to directly address who's accountable, so here's what it is. Anybody have a problem with calling people out, or anybody feel like, I don't want to call this person out. I don't want to call them out, right? You said to yourself, like, if I do that, that'll be calling them out. Anybody have a relationship with that? Like, I mean, of course, no one likes being called out, right? Now, what's important to note about this is that, of course, this doesn't mean that, and even in Sabrina's example, she watched them walk away. So she didn't yell in front of everybody like, clean that up, right? So I want you all to know you always have the option to speak to people privately. And usually where some of that embarrassment comes in is when we feel called out, we're like, why would you say that in front of the group, right? Why wouldn't you bring that to me? But I do want you to be aware that sometimes when you say, I don't want to call people out, that could be a cop-out for, as someone noted in the chat really well, for avoiding the problem. Right? Like, I'm just not going to say anything, right? As Sashay said. So if you find yourself saying, I don't want to call people out, remember, you can speak to people individually, and the goal is not to embarrass them, but to give them accountability for their behavior. Now, the other point, or the other sign that you're about to skirt the issue, is that you avoid or indirectly address awkward situations and then move on as if nothing happened. Anyone ever had, let's say, a back and forth with a friend? And then the friend kind of calls you, or you reconnect with the friend again, and they don't say anything. Then you're kind of like, oh, you don't want to talk about it, right? Anybody like that? Or is anybody the friend that doesn't want to talk about it? Let's talk about that, right? Anybody ever been in a scenario where there's something important, or even a change, right? Maybe you are, sometimes when we're in group settings, the rules change, and then somebody's like, well, wasn't it just different last week? But nobody wants to say anything. Anytime you're ever in a scenario, we both didn't bother. Exactly, right? So that's also an example of skirting the issue, right? So not that every altercation has to result in, or every conflict has to result in this big mediation or long conversation, but pay attention to when you're skirting the issue, when things remain ambiguous. Like when you're unwilling, again, to be specific about what a problem was and specific about what a solution would be. Any questions? So anybody here find that that's their problem? They skirt the issue with accountability? We have two more. So if this is one, if you noted you were not a direct communicator, maybe this is one of the reasons why. All right, let's keep going.
I have this issue. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I have this issue where, okay, so I try my best, like I like to code switch, and then I try my best not to get ghetto and get mad. And I like, that's why I usually avoid it, because then I know, I don't know, I have a little anger issue. So then it might come out, and I was like, it's better not to say nothing.
So are you saying, Sasha, that your concern, right, is that when you're frustrated, the words that you use come across, what do you mean, more harsh than you mean? When you say ghetto, you mean like the way, like your anger, the full anger.
Yeah, too aggressive, and then they start getting nasty, and then you start getting nasty, and then it just becomes like a whole big thing. And then like I can picture that ahead of time, and then I would just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna avoid this.
That's fair. So, and what I mean by fair, I mean, that's what happens when we're angry, right? When we come off harsh, is it's our tone. And this is the thing I want you to be aware of, right? Sometimes people over police tone. And by that, I mean, like they put an emphasis on tone to knock you off of the validity of what you're saying. Because you can say something and you can say it angrily, but that doesn't mean what you're saying is incorrect. But I will say that what you're probably noticing is people hear tone before they hear the message. So what I would encourage you to do, right, is not, instead of backing off the problem, think about either counting to 10, right? Or think about, can I communicate this to a person at a later time when I'm calmer about it or when I'm less angry about it? And that doesn't have to be to their face. Can you send them an email? Can you send them a message? Or can you just delay the conversation until it's more neutral for you? Because I know what you mean, because here's my thing, and you can take this or leave it. Anytime something is like, people are like, I can't bring that up anymore, like the time has passed. Sure, there's some things that you're like, oh man, that happened a while ago and I don't need to bring it up. But there are other things where it's like, this just happened yesterday. This is recent. Or like, I don't care if it happened last week or last month. If it's something that is going to cause difficulty in a relationship, then you have a right to bring it up. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Yeah, so one, I want to celebrate you for being conscious of your tone, right? Because people will dismiss things if they don't like the way it's said. That's also why people will also go along with things that are not good for them because they like the way it's said, right? It works both ways. But I don't want you to think that that means you can't communicate it. I want you just to be conscious of, okay, once I've calmed down or once I'm less angry, then I'm going to communicate. Then I'm going to communicate, right? So it doesn't mean you can't communicate it. Just say if, and just, it's like contingency. When I'm calmed down, then I'll do this. Anyone else? I think that was a great point from Sashi. Any other comments, thoughts? All right. Scenario. Okay, so you're co-leading a committee with someone who doesn't seem fully engaged. They've been inconsistent with following up and don't show up to all the meetings. You want them to put in more effort or give their seat to someone else. I'm going to let you all read that, and I'm also going to let you all read the response. All right. Is this person, in this scenario, are you communicating directly? Hey, are you okay with co-leading the committee? You don't attend all the meetings and you don't say much when you come. Also, when I email you about follow-up items and next steps, you don't respond. It's great to be co-leading with you, but I want to make sure you're committed. Is that direct? This is so interesting. Okay. I always like this example because it always, because it is viewed as direct. And I would challenge you all. Oh, actually, I know. What, so yes and no. Okay, so let's dig into this one, right? Because remember, in this scenario, you want them to put in more effort or give their seat to someone else. So let's talk, for the people who said this is direct, give me a phrase that is direct here. What makes it direct? And it doesn't mean your answer is wrong, right? Remember, everybody has different language.
So in my opinion, where she says, or when I say, are you okay with co-leading? That, I think that's like targeting the issue or what might be the issue there. And also when it says that you don't attend all the meetings and you don't say much when you come, that is also a direct speech because it's noting or keeping them accountable of the actions that you notice or calling them out on it. And also where it says you don't respond to emails. When I say you don't respond to the emails, that's also targeting the issue because you're also noticing that, so there are like 3 points there that you're like, okay, this is targeting the issue because if these are the 3 things that are coming out, then you must not be okay. So let me just ask first before jumping to conclusions.
Okay, Amoy, I like that. Am I saying your name correctly, Amoy?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I'm what?
I like the examples that you gave, right? Because underneath it, you're like, listen, you don't attend all the meetings. Basically, you're giving this person specific examples of what might not be okay, is what you're saying. And bringing that to their attention. Absolutely. So for anyone who says no, why might this not be? What would be your take on why this, or what's your phrasing that says, you know what, this is not direct or not as direct? Because it's not giving a demand. So Daphne wrote, it's not giving a demand or change of action. Okay, this one is always interesting because it always goes both ways, right? Now, one of the things I want you all to pay attention to here is there's a reluctance to share the full story. Now, when we talk about being a direct communicator, we're always talking about in the context of, what you're saying going to give you what you actually want, right? That's how you know something is effective, right? If something's effective, it's like, if I do this, this is going to solve this problem, right? It's as simple as like, if I brush my teeth, I won't have bad breath. Or if I go to school, then I'm qualified for this job, right? Anything you do is supposed to be affected or connected to what you want. So in this scenario, you want them to put in more effort or give their seat to someone else. Now, the reluctance to share the full story goes to what Daphne's saying, which is, it's not giving, we don't have to call it a demand, but it isn't giving a full choice, right? It's not giving a clear choice. And one way to look at that, we'll talk about why we don't do it, but one way to look at that is, anybody ever had someone apologize to you and you were like, it's okay? Anybody ever said that? Anybody was like, it's okay? Like, it's like our default when somebody apologizes, like, it's okay. Anybody say that? I say it. I'm like, it's okay. And then I'm like, was that really okay? Right? Was that really okay? So here, right? And these are just defaults. These are things we do. And maybe instead of it's okay, we meant, I appreciate that you apologize. And yes, that basically okay is this default term we tend to use that doesn't, it's ambiguous. So here, someone's saying, are you okay with co-leading the committee? Now that first part is a direct question, but the second part, which is minimizing the full story, right, is you're not saying, if you're not, I think you should step down. That's the part that people leave out, right? And if you want someone to step down, you usually have to ask them. So now this tends to also get some interesting responses. So let me know bluntly and clearly if you would use this or if you'd say something else. So from my perspective, it seems like you cannot commit to the responsibilities of leading the committee right now. You've missed most of the meetings, and when you attend meetings, you don't say much. You also don't respond to my or the other team members' follow-up messages. Are you willing or able to invest more time in preparing for the meetings and following up on requests? Or do you think it's best to step down so that someone else could take on these responsibilities? Anyone feel like this is harsh? Okay, I see Jose with his hand up. Okay. I usually get some people who feel like it's harsh. They feel like it's not empathetic. Jose, okay, very harsh. Now, Jose, what makes it harsh? What language or what's it here where you're like, oh, that's...
I don't know, it's just me personally. That's not the type of character I am. Kind of will find another way to phrase it, but they're pretty straightforward. It's just not the type of person I am, though. But it's the reality. It's what needs to be done.
Jose, no, I love that you said that because previously, Sabrina, she gave us an example in her language. So how would you, right, let's go back to this scenario. Somebody was thinking, I know, sometimes we think, again, when people are direct, we think people who are like, I just tell it like it is, you know, sometimes like, I just tell it like it is. And we're like, you're right. But like, you could get, you know, or like some people are like, I'm a straight shooter. And you're like, I could appreciate that, but like, it's not, I want to walk that, I want to bring the consciousness as some of us are more comfortable being straight and direct than others. But as we move towards being direct and being advocate for ourselves, it's a skill. Just remember what you want your language to connect to what you actually want, right? The first step to getting what you want is asking for it. But Jose, let's go back to this scenario because I like what you said. How would you address this scenario, right? How would you address asking the person to put in more effort or giving their seat to someone else in your language?
Well, for me, it's kind of nature for me to always ask them to try to like help them out, try to accommodate them first. And then if I see that they're not putting in the effort, then I'll eventually have to come to this, which is what I found to be very harsh. But I would first try to help them out, try to see what's going on, because we never know what's going on in their personal life. Maybe there's something outside of work that's influencing them to not be as involved. So try to help them out. But eventually, if they keep on going, they'll have to get to this. So I kind of understand.
All right, Jose, usually the feedback that I get about why it's harsh is the people feel like there's a lack of empathy here. Here's my, and again, it's not right or wrong, right? I appreciate Jose's insight, similar to Sabrina, because each of you has to get your own language. What I would ask of, I had a thought and then it left for a little bit, but I would say to address being reluctant to share the full story. I would say speak directly by sharing the uncomfortable details and asking the hard questions without assuming the consequences of being honest. So, yeah, without assuming the consequences of being honest. So, Jose, as you were talking, what it made me think of is this. I want to pose this question to you all as leaders. How many people, and you all are each leaders here, have had something pop up in their personal life, and then you said, you know what? This is so significant right now that there are things there are responsibilities I'm no longer able to hold. Or, right, so one, put a one if you've done that. Or have you been two, which is this is significant in my personal life, but I'm still going to hold on to these responsibilities as best as I can, even though I know that I'm not doing what I should be doing, or that I'm not doing things at the level I need to be doing. And I'm asking this question because, Jose, to your point, what I've learned is that sometimes, right, and Jose, both you and Ashley have said you would step down, or you've let go of some responsibilities. Sometimes I find with leaders or people in positions where they're accountable for outcomes, sometimes they know that things are, that there's some slack, right? But they don't feel comfortable saying, man, I have to let this go for personal reasons. So I only mention that because while we don't know, you're absolutely right. We never know what's going on in people's personal lives, and people's personal lives influence how they show up in other areas. Sometimes people need a nudge to say, like, you know, it's okay if you're no longer able to do this. So I want you to keep in mind that that's a way of being empathetic too. Sometimes giving people permission that's like, you can come back at another time to lead the committee, or someone else can step up right now, is also a form of empathy and understanding. It doesn't have to be like, you got to get out of here. All right, but let's talk a little bit more about how you will know, right? Similar to skirting the issue. I want you to know when you're not sharing the full story, or when you're about to not ask the hard question. And here are two signs. Anybody over apologize or use sheepish language, and by sheepish, I mean anybody who's like, hate to bother you, or like, I don't like, you don't really want to seem like the bad person, right? So you're like, I'm so sorry I have to do this, right? I'm so sorry. Like, I really don't. And again, I'm not saying you shouldn't apologize, especially if you are someone who is at fault. What I'm saying is there's a such thing as over apologizing, as it means like over and over and over again. And that's not always productive. All right, Jose. So Jose, are you our resident over apologizer?
Yeah.
Jose, are you a people pleaser?
Little bit. I like to say so, yeah.
It's all right. I think all of us start with a little bit of that in it. There's nothing. So here's what I'll say. The advantage of being a people pleaser is that you have a strong sense of empathy and you desire not to offend. The trouble with being a people pleaser, especially as a leader, is that you struggle to give out consequence even when people need it. So, but I want to tell you, so is that fair? Does that resonate?
Yeah, I agree.
So here's why that's important as a leader though, because your empathy will allow you to excuse things, right? You know, so the thing about consequences is, Jose, as a leader, and this is to everyone, your credibility and integrity is always on the line. What do I mean by that? You have to be someone who does what they say they're going to do and someone who demonstrates that they treat people equally. What is true for this person is true for that person. When we are a people pleaser, sometimes we are uncomfortable with saying, hey, you did that. Kind of like the first example, like, hey, you did that, but you don't want to give people consequences for what they do. And where that gets difficult is that other people will notice, like word will get out, like Jose is not going to say anything, or like Jose is not going to do anything, right? And then you lose your ability to, I'm not going to say enforce rules, but I'm going to say, some people, once it gets out that there's no consequences, you'd be surprised by how many people will stop doing the things you're asking them to do. Because sometimes we're all like children and we'll be like, well, what does it matter? So I would just say, remember, consequences they're not meant to be a bad thing, especially if you set expectations up front. So if you're like, hey, you all, let's all get on the same page. We're agreeing that after 3 strikes, this happens. So I would say that would be my advice to you and any other people pleaser is you can be swayed by people in a lot of different directions. So you got to know up front what the standard is for everyone. All right. So
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah. So, and then the second sign is, right, you ask for the outcome you think you can get or what the other person is comfortable with versus what you actually want. So here, and a great example is this is, anybody ever negotiated with themselves? Here's what I mean by that. Let's say you really want to, maybe you're like, you ever had something you're like, I really don't want to go. I don't want to do that. But then you feel bad saying you want to do that. So then you're like, oh, like you ask the person like, hey, can I not do this? But then they take a moment to respond and then you just follow me down. You know what? It's okay. I'll just do it. Anybody do that? You ask for what you really want. The person's silent or delayed in their response, either in person or text, and your guilt kicks in and you're like, I'll just do it. Right? Anybody do that? Because if you do, yep, with friends, and if you do, you're not sharing the full story, right? You're not asking the hard question or sticking with what you really want. You're just like, this is what I think I can get, or this is what I should ask for. So pay attention to when you feel guilty, right? Sometimes we're not direct because we feel guilty about what we're asking for. So that's a big one for this one. All right, you all are doing awesome. This is the final scenario. All right, so you worked the night shift at the library and you emailed your colleague to see if they could cover for you next weekend. You emailed your colleague over a week ago and you haven't heard from them since. Your shift is coming up next week. Here's what you say. Nothing. You do not follow up, or you assume the colleague is busy and will eventually get back to you. Anybody ever done that? I used to do that. You meaning like even more broadly than this, right? Anybody ever make an ask for something that's important to you? And then you're like, no, they'll get back to me. Or like, anybody ever do that? All right. Right. That's the perfect phrase, Daphne. You just let it go. You're like, I did it. And now it's over. Okay. So one of the reasons, right, because this all goes back to being a direct communicator. And the reason why being direct is important because you have to be clear when you set expectations so that people are not disappointed. So what happens here is that when you're not comfortable bringing up an unresolved issue, this happens when we assume that raising the question again makes us pesky, annoying, or a bother. So going back to the other one a little bit, if you've ever said, hate to bother you, or I don't want to inconvenience you, or it's one thing to say thank you for your time. It's another thing to say like, hey, I'll make this quick. I don't want to waste your time, right? If you're somebody, if the psychology around how you bring it up again or how you ask for something is about how pesky, annoying, inconvenient, that's a sign that you are not bringing up unresolved issues, right? Because it assumes that you have to make yourself less than and put the other person up on a pedestal when let's talk about what we could actually do here, right? Let's talk about this scenario. So you can always follow up via email, right? Or directly in person with your colleague and say, hi, following up about my previous email. Are you able to cover my shift next week? Let me know by tonight so that I can ask someone else. Thank you. Would anybody else? Suprina did it for the first one. Jose did it for the second one. Would anybody else follow up in a different way? If we go back to the scenario, would anybody else follow up about having their shift covered using a different language? Okay. Let's talk about this one a little bit before we go on to the signs. So follow up, right? Bring the question to the other person's attention again and give them a deadline. So this one is an interesting one, meaning I like what Daphne mentioned about you. Sometimes we just let it go. Jose, okay, so you agree with the way this one was expressed. Okay. So here's what happens. People, anybody ever missed a text or an email? Anybody have multiple inboxes? I know some of y'all leave people on red. Y'all know y'all leave people on red sometimes, right? It's on purpose, right? Somebody laughing, that's right. It's so much. We have phones, we have emails. Sometimes, you're doing something, you're not even near your phone, or you're trying to take a break away from you. Sometimes, and then you go back to it and you're like, it's a lot. Basically what I'm saying is there's a lot of information and messaging we're constantly getting. So if that can happen to you, who's to say that can't happen to someone else? So in following up, so one, I'm saying that to encourage you to say, when you're following up, the person anybody ever followed up and somebody was like, oh, I'm so glad you followed up. Like, I looked at this and meant to respond and didn't. Actually, I know some of you all said that with a text message to somebody. You were like, I thought I responded to this. Anybody ever say that? I thought I responded to this, right? Like, oh, Kobe, looks like you have something to say. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, Laurie. Sorry, I joined the meeting a bit late, but I want to participate. Yeah, I've actually had an experience like that with a job. Funny enough, they forgot to reach out to me, so I reached out. So especially being passive in situations like that, it's easy to like overanalyze and like overthink and be like, why are they doing this? Like, is it me? But when you're assertive in a situation and you want to follow up, you get that clarity.
So well said, Kobe.
You're muted. Sorry.
Somebody muted me. I think that was Jason, y'all. We can get on him for doing that. But yes, Kobe, exactly. Being assertive, which is just being direct in the follow-up. It's not letting it go, as Daphne said, right? Because if you want something, that doesn't mean because someone didn't immediately get back to you, does not mean you didn't get it. Like you said, the word is clarity. Now, on the other end, sometimes people don't know how to say, hey, you didn't get the job, or like, I can't do this. Anybody in this group, one of those people who don't know how to tell people no? So then you're like, I'm just not going to respond. Maybe they'll get the hint because I'm not going to say no. Anybody like that? Okay. Right. And that's right. As we build the muscle to advocate for ourselves, what I'm going to say in that scenario is these people, and myself at one time included, we're not going to tell you no. So what's helpful here is also, if you're the one who wants the request or needs the favor done, then what you do is you give them a deadline so you know when to move on. That's the way because you can stay in limbo wanting something for a long time and no one ever gives you any information about it. So in that way, you have to give yourself your own closure and say, listen, I followed up with this person. I didn't hear from them at the deadline I noted. So now I'm going to go find another way to solve my problem. So that's another reason why you want to say, hey, can you respond by here? Because then you can move on. You can move on knowing that that person is not going to get back to you, or when they get back to you, you're not so attached to it, right? You're not. Sometimes that's what makes things difficult too. We're so attached to it. All right. So again, if you're looking for some signs that you're not comfortable bringing up an unresolved issue, here are a couple. So you avoid a direct yes or no questions so you don't have to feel rejected. So sometimes we don't follow up because anybody here take rejection personally? And I say that as if it does, rejection can feel very personal. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying you're like, oh. So we avoid that sense that like, when we don't want to hear the no, right? Because if we feel like it could be the no, it's like why some people don't shoot their shot at anybody or anything, right? Because you're like, oh, if that doesn't work out, like that's gonna burn, right? That's gonna burn. Even though it's only temporary, it feels like it's gonna burn for a long time. So we don't want to feel it, right? But pay attention to when that's stopping you from asking the question. That's what all of this goes back to ooh, there's things we want to avoid feeling like, whether it's the first one, it's the accountability, right? Sometimes we don't want to offend people. That's why we don't want to hold them accountable. But the second one, it's guilt. Oh, I don't want to ask this question, you know, like I feel like I shouldn't be asking for this. And then for this one, right, it's that feeling of being, again, as Kobe said so well, right? We don't want to feel too assertive, or we don't want to feel rejected, right? We feel like we're at the mercy of someone else, and that's a vulnerable position. And so we sometimes hesitate to follow up. So again, if you find yourself saying, okay, I don't want to seem too eager or desperate or pushy, or you know what, if I ask this, I might be rejected, then those are signs that you're likely not going to bring something up again. And you need to reframe it with the great word that Kobe mentioned, which is clarity. So let's put this all together. We went through three causes or three reasons people are not direct communicators. One, they skirt the issue, which means they don't give accountability or they ask for an ambiguous outcome. Two, they're reluctant to share the full story, which means that you don't ask the hard questions. You don't ask for what you really want, right? You ask for what you think you can get, or you keep things, again, ambiguous. Or three, you hesitate to follow up on an unresolved issue. So when you look at these three reasons, which are the most common reasons people are not direct communicators, would you call yourself a direct communicator? If yes, put that in the chat. If no, I want you to write the one that you do the most that prevents you from being direct. Do you skirt the issue the most, right? Accountability. Are you reluctant to share the bad news? You don't like to ask tough questions that might offend the other person, or that might make you feel guilty. Or is it three, you're really like, I don't want to, if I already asked about it once, I'm gonna let it go. Right, I'm not gonna bring it up again. All right, we got some all of them. Yeah, tough questions. That's right. And I'll share this PowerPoint with you all, right? I'll share it with Jason and he can share it with you all. That's interesting. Sometimes we do have situations in our personal lives where they're easier, and sometimes it's like our professional life is easier. For me personally, it's easier in my professional life to say no than it is in my personal life. I'm always like, ooh, I can be, to use Jose's language, very accommodating. All right. So yeah. And there are things that are situational. Absolutely. So remember, this goes back to setting expectations to prevent disappointment, right? So one, in order to set clear expectations, and advocate for yourself, you want to pinpoint who is accountable. That's how you don't skirt the issue. Two, you want to share the outcome you actually want, which is the full story. And three, you want to ask a yes or no question. These are ways you can keep setting clear expectations. All right, so how does being a direct communicator translate to the job, right? Because that's what this is also about. How do you all take these skills that you're using and translate them to a job? So being a direct communicator means that you have the ability to set and manage expectations. This is a leadership skill that gives you the ability to display integrity and honesty, right? What you do matches what you say, which is very important. Two, analyze issues and solve problems, AKA pinpoint the root of the obstacle or challenge, right? When you can hone in on why you're not being direct, you can also be analytical about how to solve a problem or what's causing the problem. And three, you can drive for a clear result, right? To go back to what I think Sasha said about disappointments, right? It's like when we fall short of our goal that we want, or when someone leads us to believe something that's not true. When we experience something different than what we believe or what we're expected to, then that causes disappointment. But also you can't, again, one of the big takeaways I want you all to take is you can't reach a target, or you can't hit a target that you didn't name. And so part of setting expectations is being clear and direct about what you want. All right. I know, Jason, we wrap up at 5, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So let's jump into this second part, which is motivation. What energizes me when participating in a group? So we're going to answer that question right now. Okay. Oh, we have some more people still joining. All right. So have you ever felt drained? That's the question I want you to put in the chat, right? Have you ever felt drained? Now, it could happen for a few reasons. You're putting in more labor, effort, and energy than you're getting back. You have to push yourself harder to get things that were once easy for you done. And you've changed, but you're not sure how, right? Have you ever felt drained? This is actually a picture at Hostos, which is exciting. Definitely. Okay, I like that. Today is my recovery day from I like draining is such a like, whew, it's not tired, right? It's like, I don't have anything in me. Like, this is really taking a lot out of me. All right, so the reason why we're talking about motivation and being drained, right, is because think about when you feel drained. You do not do more than you absolutely have to. You're just like, what do I need to get by, right? Like, what can I do to get to whatever is next? But that idea that you're putting in above and beyond, and I'm going to assume that everyone here is an above and beyond person, which makes feeling drained exceptionally hard, right? You're just like, I don't have it in me, right? I'm just going to do the minimum. And the reason you feel drained is because the result of your effort isn't rewarding to you. I'm going to say that again. The reason you're feeling drained, and this will make more sense when you know your motivation, is because the result that you're getting from your labor, from your effort and your time isn't rewarding for you, meaning you don't value it, right? It doesn't give you a hit. So you're not getting a need met, so you don't feel energized. Now, my question to you all, second question is, are you aware of your motive when working with others? Right, that's not work. That's right. Are you aware of your motive when you work with other people? Do you know what you want from them? Or do you know what you need to feel like, oh, this is an exchange? You know how people say build reciprocal relationships? Or like, I'm only available for, like the movement on IG, I'm only available for wealth and health and prosperity and like reciprocity, right? When people emphasize reciprocity, do you know what you need in your relationships? No? Yes? All right. And again, there's no right or wrong. It's just a consciousness, right? These questions are only meant to raise consciousness. But the end game of this is when you know what motivates you, you know what energizes you, and you know how to prevent burnout. So let's dig into that. So you're going to take a quiz right now. And the quiz is going to help you identify what's your motivation when working with a group. And then I'm going to tell you about how you can, the things that are actually energizing for you based on your motivation. All right, so motivation quiz. You're going to pick 1, 2, or 3 for each question. There are 4 questions. Now, by the end of it, you're just going to say mostly 1s, mostly 2s, or mostly 3s. Okay? All right. As a leader, I'm most proud of 1, my ability to influence others. 2, my accomplishments and the results I've achieved. 3, my ability to build meaningful relationships with others. Now, you don't have to put this in the chat, you can, but for each of the 4 questions, make sure you write down 1, 2, or 3. All right, we're gonna have a range, I like that. All right, next question. I take risks. 1, when I know it can result in giving me an advantage, big or small. 2, when I know there's a high probability it will work out in my favor. Or 3, when I have other support. So when do you take risks? And now a risk is anything that could have an unfavorable outcome. All right, does everyone have an answer for both 1 and 2? All right. Remember, keep track of what your numbers are. Let's move to 3. I prefer to work in group settings when I can give directions and guidance. That's 1. 2, when there is a clear direction and goal. 3, where everyone's ideas are fairly considered and decisions are made as a team. 1, 2, or 3. When do you prefer to work in group settings? Why is never not an option? We'll talk about that, Sabrina. But we end up working in groups. Think about your group experience. What is it where you're like, all right, I could do this. I could already tell people who don't like to work in groups. I know what your motivation is. All right. I describe myself as direct and persistent, ambitious and focused, or welcoming and helpful. Now, you could be all of these things, right? But which one would you first go to describe yourself? All right, you all. Now what I want you all to put in the chat, you have all 4 questions. Congratulations. Were you mostly 1s, mostly 2s, mostly 3s? Were you half and half for 2, mostly 2s, 3s? Okay. All 2s, okay, 2. That's why I thought Sabrina, I knew it. I was like, Sabrina's number 2, especially when you mentioned about the group. All right. Jason chimed in with 3s, Ashley 3, mostly 3s. 3, 1, 3, okay. Rossini, mostly 3s, and then a 1. All right, we're gonna talk about each one. Now, I don't see any 1s, which, anybody hear any 1s? Sometimes I don't get 1s, that's all right. We're gonna talk about each of them. I don't see any 1s here, okay. All right, so congratulations, right? If you are only or mostly 1s, you're motivated by power. Oh, Erica, you're motivated by power. All right, we'll talk about that. If you are only or mostly 2s, congratulations, you're motivated by achievement. And if you're only mostly 3s, congratulations, you're motivated by affiliation. Now, congratulations to everyone, because a lot of this is self-awareness, and self-awareness truly, again, the more you know about yourself, the better choices you can make for yourself. You ever heard anybody have a friend, or you are the friend where you're like, that's great for you, but I wouldn't do that, right? That's because you do it. If you do that, that's from a place of self-awareness. It's not meant to shame anyone, right? Self-awareness is not rooted in shame. It's rooted in our understanding of our individual needs. People will say, oh, people are different. And it's true, but often we don't know what makes us different. And when you know what makes you different, especially in this case, then you know what's rewarding, the results you want that energize you, and you really don't do things, or you do less of the things that drain you. But let's dig into this. Now, Erica, are you the only one motivated by power? I'm going to go through them all, but I like to highlight the people or speak directly to the people as we go through. All right.
Yes,
so,
I think it was like, the statement, it really,
yes.
Picture myself. I didn't thought that was about that, because personally, I didn't feel, and I don't feel, that that's the power of motivator, but it was almost once. But I think I'm going to try to get to the 2s, maybe work on myself a little bit. Thank you.
Oh, and Estelle had 3 1s, 4 3s, 1 2. Okay. So Estelle sounds like
yeah. So for each question, I had 2 answers, but I put my strongest as first choice and then the second.
Okay.
That's why I ended up with these answers.
Okay, so you're somewhere between a 3 and a 1. Interesting. All right. So now people don't tend to no one likes to be motivated by power, and it's because the word power, right? We have this idea like, oh, power, that makes me bad. Power is influence, right? And so when you're motivated by power in groups, you're driven to improve your reputation. You feel rewarded when recognized for your influence. Now, emphasis on that word reward, right? We're going to keep going to this. Reward is you all are always putting out labor, effort, time, energy. You put that out, but what are you getting back, right? So if you are motivated by power, what you need to get back, or what will energize you when you get it back, is speaking on behalf of others in meetings, right? These are things that are energizing for you. So you can speak on behalf of others in presentations or meetings. Because remember, for you, when you're motivated by power, you feel rewarded or recognized when you're influencing. Influencing is having an impact on a situation or outcome or a person. You also feel energized when you can mentor others or train others on the ropes. You also feel energized when you know that your efforts will lead to a higher ranking position in the future. Now, a key piece of power is that you're always looking at how you can lead, or if you're joining a group, how you can get to a leadership position. And by that, I also mean visible, how you can be visible to other people. There you go, Estelle. Jason, help you out.
What? Really? No, that's not true.
No, it's not. So see here,
Oh
Estelle.
my gosh.
Estelle, this is not bad. It's not bad, Estelle. So none of this is bad. It's meant to be. Okay. Also, people motivated by power are decisive. What that means is you like to make decisions and you want to be able to make the final decision. People motivated by power they're not the people who are gonna be like, let's all get consensus here. They're gonna be like, let's get the ball rolling, right? Also, if you're motivated by power, if you're not making the final decision, you want to have access to the person who is. Now, here's what's important, Estelle, and anyone, I think Erica, people don't, when you think of power, it's not like you're power hungry, like, what power is you feel energized when you can influence an outcome or influence a person. That's when the exchange, so basically think of if you're doing all these things, you're less likely to burn out. Because these are things where you're like, oh, they're improving my reputation, they're improving my visibility, I feel like a leader, I feel like I'm decisive, and this makes me feel good. These are things where you're like, I'm in flow state. That's what this means. Power does not mean that. Now, there are some people who are motivated by power, and I'll share a dark side for everyone, right? People who are motivated by power, what you have to be, and by dark side, I mean, we all got some shady stuff we could do, right? I'll name them for each one. But if anybody ever had somebody take their idea and present it as theirs? Anybody ever had somebody do that? Because if you did have somebody do that, you got by a power person, right? Because what they wanted was, they wanted something that they knew it was a good idea. They knew it would influence and get the outcome they want. They just didn't want to attribute it to you, because if you notice here, power people, it's not that they don't like to share, right? That's not fair to say that they don't like to share, right? They rely on they rely on relationships, but usually in relationships, they like to lead within them. So they aren't, it's not, again, it's not that they aren't collaborative. It's that if they have to say it's me or you, these people will be assertive towards themselves. Just something to be conscious of. All right. So now, if you are someone motivated by power and you are leading a group, here's what I want you to know. Be aware that when motivated by power, you can be competitive, right? And again, being competitive is not a bad thing, because people can, if we see someone else doing well, then we're motivated by power, we feel pushed, right? So the way to foster belonging in the group is to share opportunities with others. So here's what we mean by that, right? People are inspired by you. If you're motivated by power, people look at you, you're leading, you're decisive, people are inspired. But what you may not realize that you're doing, because you're competing and you want to lead, is you're not necessarily sharing the opportunities that you're getting or that you know of with others. So a way to make people feel connected to you, to make people feel like they are on the same page as you, or that they can trust you, is to share the opportunities you get, right? Don't just hoard the things for yourself. That's something to be aware of. Now, number 2, any questions? I want to give everybody a little bit of time. Any questions if you're motivated by power before we move on to achievement? Now, also remember, this quiz is based on the 3 needs theory, which means that for some of you who felt like you had a little bit of the other ones, that's fine, because each of us are dynamic human beings, which means you have one that's dominant. Think of this as your dominant motivator, but not your entire motivation. All right, my number 2s, my achievement people, where are you? Now, in groups, you're driven to improve your knowledge or skills. You feel rewarded when recognized for your accomplishments. Now, remember, big emphasis here on skills, right? Knowledge, competence, but also what's rewarding for you is when you're recognized for what you've done, right? What you've accomplished, hence the word achievement, right? All right, so now I'm gonna mention y'all dark side too, but first I'm gonna tell you what's energizing for you when you feel rewarded, when you don't feel drained. When you're working on a project that requires you to think realistically and strategically, right? So achievement people, remember, you want to accomplish something. So if something, these are the people that are like, if something feels way out there, they're gonna be like, wait a minute, how do we create clear parameters? Basically, these people need a goal, is what I'm saying. They need a goal, a clear, tangible, concrete goal. And this also speaks to why in groups, these people like role clarity. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And to Sabrina's point, the dark side of this group, which I'll share early, is these are the people that will just do it themselves, because they feel like, if I wait for y'all not gonna either get it done. If you ever said, you're not gonna get it done the way I would do it, that's very achievement, right? Because you're like, What you're really saying is I hold a high standard and I don't think you hold my high standard, right? But which means that you'll often be a little bit reclusive and you'll just do things yourself. Now, the other side of this is also, yep, that's me, exactly. There you go. If you want, I'll see, look at all the achievers going on. If you want something done right, you do it. That's very achievement, right? Very like, and let's talk about why. Because it's rewarding for you to create structure and then create efficiency, meaning, are we using the resources the right way? Are we using our talents the right way? Are we using our money the right way? Is our effort, is our time being used the right way, right? Efficiency, because remember, everything is about, we need to get to the goal. A clear metric for success is very rewarding for you because you need to know, are you on track to achieve it or are you not? What's also important and energizing for you, and this is why you all cannot like groups, is when you feel like you're in a group where you can't hold everyone to a high standard, right? That's why Daphne or others in the chat were like, just do it yourself. Something to be aware of for achievers, right? Is that you have to be in environments where you feel like other people will step up with you. Other than that, in the long term, it will be, or even in the short term, it will be draining for you because you feel like you're operating at a high level. And instead of everyone operating up there, you're doing their work too. And so that's a quick path to burnout or to feeling like you're, again, overgiving. So you feel energized also when you have a mentor or member who can give you direct, honest feedback. Now, what's important about this group is, yes, they're achievers, but again, everything is about that metric of success. If you all are falling short of success, you want to know why and you want to know how to fix it. Now, I will say this. Be aware that when motivated by achievement, you can be distant or reclusive. And we talked about this, right? Your standard is so high that at the first whiff of like, these people can't meet it, you're like, oh, no, you're not going to bring me down, right? I'm just going to do this myself. But I want you to be aware of that when in a group, you can also have the opportunity and the option, not just to say, well, I'll do it myself, but to teach other people what you know. We respect you, right? We see the effort that you're holding yourself to. We see what you've accomplished. And we want to come along with you, but you take for granted all the things you know and all the things other people don't know. So of course, in groups, it can be frustrating if people aren't at your standard, but don't assume that that means I have to do it myself all of the time, because that's another way to lead to burnout. Think of, okay, in the long term, because in the short term, it always feels good to do it yourself. It's quicker because you know. But in the long term, if you keep doing something yourself and not teaching other people, how will that impact you or the group? Just ask yourself that question. Any questions for my achievers before we move on to the number threes?
I have a question.
Yep.
What if you're in a position where you want to teach, but people aren't being as receptive as you like to the knowledge that you're giving?
And are they clear on that what you're giving the knowledge for? Because this is a great question.
Yes.
Okay. So Kobe, right? There's a lot of different ways. So I'm not gonna ask you to give me an example because that might, well, I'll ask you, are you comfortable giving an example? No, you can say no.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So I'll use my mom as an example. She's an older woman and she's not really familiar with technology like that. And she wants to move in a position where she wants to well, like when I'm helping her, like if I'm helping her with something tech related, maybe like helping her with her resume or sending emails and I'm trying to teach her something and she's just not, she doesn't want to consume the information. How do you like find your way around that?
Now, does she not want to consume the information because she wants you to keep doing it?
Yeah.
For her? Okay, that's that. So that is, because as soon as you said that, I was like, my mom does the same thing. And she'll always be like, listen, I just don't want to do this, right? And what, in that case, it's a little different. The dependency there is like, your mom wants to keep the dependency on you, basically, right? It's like it's like, if your mom put in more effort, she could do it, but what's underneath it is your mom is unwilling to do it. Like, that's the thing, you know? And I say that even, I have a mom who will be like, can you do this? Can you print this? And I'll be like, I could teach you. And she's like, she'll pretend, she'll be like, yeah. And then she'll be like, I'm sorry, I can't do it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's because for them, especially as people age, it's just easier And again, it's not, in the case of a mom, it's not right or wrong, right? It's our choice, especially if you have other things you need to do, then it's like you have that conversation. But the reason why your mom is not receptive is because she's unwilling to, she's just unwilling. She's like, I got you. And until that she's put in a position where she's not able to reach you to do that, then
Right.
that's her solution. Her solution is you.
Mhm.
So what I will say to that, Kobe, right? Because I know it's kind of like, oh man, like, because you can't, with our mom, sometimes we're like, I can't really make them do the thing, right? But I will say in groups, pay attention to when people are unwilling, right? Because and this goes to the workplace. One of the main reasons why people don't do what they're supposed to do at work is not that they don't have the skill, it's they don't have the attitude. You ever work with somebody who's like, I don't, it's not a, like, anybody ever had achievers? You ever had somebody say to you, it's not that serious? Like, why you putting it so it's not that serious? And you were like, what? What? What you mean it's not that, like, serious to me, right? Of course it's serious. You're an achiever, right? So, but what they mean by that is like, I'm just not going to go as hard as you. I'm unwilling, right? That's an attitude problem. They know how to do it. They're just, their attitude and their sentiment is like, I'm just not going to do it, right? So I highlight that to you all because when you notice that somebody's attitude, right, that they're just like, it's not that big deal to me, or like, it's unwilling. And it's really tough to get to people who are unwilling to do it, but pay attention to that, because if you ever have the opportunity outside of your mother, Kobe, right? Because these are our parents or caregivers. But if you're really in a working group and you notice somebody's attitude, know that, bring it to them, but it's going to be very difficult for people to change their attitude unless they're given a consequence or unless they're removed, right? And that's also why jobs care so much about attitude, because a positive, constructive attitude, you can't teach. We've all seen the other end of it, right? You can't give someone a positive attitude. All right, my last group, my number threes, who are motivated by affiliation. So in groups, you're driven to improve your relationships. You feel rewarded when recognized for your inclusivity. Now, key piece here is rewarded for inclusivity, right? You like creating belonging. You like making people feel like they're supported. So you feel energized when you can make others feel included, supported, by helping, counseling, and serving them. No surprise, Jason is in a counseling position as the leader of the student leadership program. So this also means you feel energized when you can coordinate events or initiatives that boost morale, right? We are a relationship-driven person. So it's important that you, when you feel the impact or that trust is growing in your relationships, that's rewarding and energizing for you. 3, you have team members who care about you as a person, not just the task you do. This is very important for affiliative people, right? Because of all the motivations, achievement people are the most like, if I gotta go at it alone, I'm gonna go alone. Power people need, in order to lead, I mean, of course we lead ourselves first, but you need to lead a group. So they exist in relationships, but affiliative people really need coworker relationships that aren't just like, hey, I know you on the job. It's, I know about you as a person beyond the job. It's important to be a part of a community with a shared mission and vision. You want people to see the bigger picture, not to be in petty quarrels sometimes about how to achieve that mission, but just to recognize the mission is bigger than one person. And also, you feel that others can trust and confide in you in their secrets and with their concerns. Now, the dark side, or I should say, right, everybody got a little bit of something. The other side of being affiliative is I found that these people are very giving, but they can be the least receptive to help. Right? It's like their identity is, I will help, but I might need some help, but you won't know that I need the help. Right? So where my number 3 is at? My number 3 is, are you comfortable asking for help? Or are you more comfortable being the giver of help? Do we have any 3s? Okay, it was mostly 2s. All right. All right, so now, if you are driven by affiliation, here's how you can create belonging. Be aware that when motivated by affiliation, you can be overgiving and spread yourself thin. So the way to foster belonging is to receive from others. People want to help you too. Now, this is important, right? For each one, we talked about, oh, actually, I like that. That's good. That's fair. I like that. That's good, Ashley. And you're number 3 and you're comfortable asking for help, because that means you're balanced. And that means your relationships are thriving and reciprocal, which is very important for people driven by affiliation. All right, so How does knowing your motivation help? So how does you knowing your motivation help you on the job? So when you know what drives you in working with others, you have the ability to foster belonging. You also have the ability to play to your strengths, but fostering belonging is a leadership skill that gives you the ability to collaborate and promote teamwork, right? So basically each of you now know how you best participate in a group. If it's power, you want to lead. If it's achievement, you need clear role and clear accountabilities and metrics. And if you are affiliative, you want people to feel supported and like they can rely on each other. You can also develop others. Now, anyone ever had someone try to give them feedback and you were like, I'm not going to take it because they don't know me like that? Like you felt like, who are you to give me feedback? Anybody ever had somebody where you were like, you don't know me like that. Why would I take that from you, right? And it's something that goes unsaid, which is that when we're hearing feedback from people or people are trying to develop us, we really have to believe they know us and that they actually have good intentions for us. And so this is something else that comes along with fostering belonging. When we feel like people treat us like we belong and we're significant and they know us, then we will take constructive feedback from them. But if we feel like people don't know us like that, then they can't help us grow because we don't believe they have our best intentions in mind. And then 3, you can innovate and champion change, right? When you are able to foster belonging, people then can move in a different direction. They can take risks, as each of you, which was a question each of you answered today. Now, what does this have to do not only with impactful leadership, but I also want to go back to the big piece of addressing burnout. I know there's a lot of things that you all do. I'm going to send Jason this PowerPoint, but I want you all to pay attention to, are you doing the things that actually give you the reward you want? If you are motivated by power, you feel most rewarded when you're like, oh my God, my reputation's improving and I am able to influence, right? I have a say. If you are motivated by power, you need to have a say. If other than that, you will be like, you feel demotivated and drained. If you are motivated by achievement, remember competence is key for you. And a big piece for you is being able to progress towards your goals. So anytime you feel like progress has stalled or that you're not even clear on what progress or success looks like, you're going to be demotivated, right? So especially if you're doing something that's long-term, you want to think about what are short-term goals that let you know you're on the right path. That keeps you energized and motivated. Now, if you're motivated by affiliation, you need strong, healthy, reciprocal relationships. You need the ability to counsel and support. And the reward for you is, again, that trust in the relationship and people feeling like they can trust you deeply. So if you, pay attention when you feel like that people have lost sight of the mission, or also pay attention when you feel like people don't trust you, because that can be very hard for you in the group and very draining for you when you have to prove, when you feel like you have to prove in your interactions that you mean well for people. All right, so let's put all this together. Leadership skills, and each of you are leaders, are the skills that allow us and you to guide, direct, and support others to reach their goals. To be an effective leader, you must be a direct communicator so that you can set expectations. Aligning actions with words builds trust. And to be an effective leader, you must be self-aware of what motivates you so that you can include others. Engaging and encouraging others increases performance. So when people trust you, then you're able, again, when you couple that with improving others' performance, as we talked about with being able to get feedback and people knowing you have good intentions for them, then you can make the impact that you want. And that's how you advocate for yourself and overcome burnout and also become the leader, a self-aware leader. So that is it. Any questions, comments, concerns? I know we have 6 minutes left. Thank you all. You are a wonderful group. You all participated all the way through, so I really value that. Can I answer any final questions, or does anyone simply want to share a thought or something that came to mind during this workshop? Oh, thank you all.
If I can add something, like I said, thank you so much. It was really clear state, and it gave me a different point of view. And as you pointed out, that it was getting to know me better. I think it's really good. And then also, I think now that you pointed out some specifics that I never thought about it, now I could understand my husband when he said that I'm too bossy, too director for him. But thank you so much for everything. But as you said, I just want to help. And this part of the, not even just influence, it's just I feel consider myself before like an empathic, like empath. And that was, when you say that it's, with influence, it's just kind of that. But thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it was
glad.
wonderful explained. Thank you.
Yes, Eric. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And that's what it is, right? Tell your husband you just want to have a say because you mean well, right? You just want to have a say because you do mean well. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Well, again, I will send Jason the PowerPoint so you all have it. Best of luck on the continued journey. I hope, again, as many of you all mentioned, that it helped you know yourself better and that when you know yourself better, you can make better decisions for yourself. So have a great weekend.
So first of all, I got to say, Estelle, I wasn't saying anything about you being a one. You're just very organized and very impactful, and when you get your mindset on something, you make it happen. And I want to shout you out because a couple of years ago when we had, I don't know if I told you about this, Luis, we had like 70 current and former members come back on Juneteenth. It was right after things really got bad in this country. And members of our group really felt that we needed to come together and have a real conversation about what was going on. If we were going to be leaders, if we were going to be representing our community and taking a role, we need to have a conversation. And the first conversation was led by our friend Samantha Jackson, who's a United States diplomat. And she, we had to keep it undercover because they don't allow them to just come out like that. But then the follow-up discussions were led by Estelle. And Estelle stepped forward to lead a number of those discussions as we continued that process of trying to understand where we all fit in, what steps we could take, how we were going to affect change in a positive way, especially where we're located, in New York City in the South Bronx, and because of our history, of our institution. And so I'll shout you out about that, Estelle. And you already know that. You already know you're a one. You are number one. Colby can give me a second on that. And then I just want to say thank you, Luis. So I always say when I'm at the workshops, I know I'm staying off screen because I've noticed that there's been like some glitchiness with the Zoom lately. But I'm here, and what I've learned over the years is that when I'm in these sessions, whether we're in person or virtually, is that I learn things about myself as well, because I'm paying attention to learn and grow. This is still part of my process, right? I'm not just sitting back thinking I know everything. And I heard some things today that made me reflect on, where I am and what I've done and the choices I make and maybe how to make better choices. So thank you for helping to educate me as well today at my Friday afternoon workshop for the Hostos Student Leadership Academy. But big shout out to you, Luis. We always appreciate when you come back. Last year, I remember the workshop went on for like almost an hour after it was over. I was driving because I had been at an event at school, and I was monitoring everything on the Zoom in the car. And the chat was still going on when I got home, which meant it was like a way, way, way far away. But I know that everybody who came to this meeting today is impacted and will take something out of this. And even if they don't realize it right away, I think maybe sharing the PowerPoint will help them to blossom and develop certain things. But I also heard some people say some things today, like Erica, like Kobe, like Sashi, and some others who spoke about things within NMY, who spoke about some things right up front and were realizing things within the session. And that's kind of what these meetings are all about. It's about learning and growth and development. And nothing's going to like say, automatically, okay, you're a leader, period, that's it. You period, stop. You get the leadership position. But it's about growth and development over a period of time. It's understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, understanding where you can go the right way and the wrong way, and how you can better yourself or understand where you're making mistakes. So I appreciate you for that. I thank you for that. And go ahead. I'm talking too much.
No, I was going to say absolutely. Thank you all again. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
And so I want to honor everybody's time as I do all the time. Let me remove these pins from here so I can see everybody. And I'll say goodbye to everybody here. Luis, thank you, of course. Have a great weekend. And let's see the gallery. So everybody have a great weekend. Kobe, good to see you. Jose, Ashley, Sashi, Brian, Francine, Yasir, Leighton, Estelle, Jessica, Annie, Wampandi, Annie. Everybody's disappearing. Adama, Cisse, Daphne, Sheridan, Casey. I know that Jessica, there's a bunch of other people here. I hope to see you out volunteering this weekend. Sabrina, who was here very early. Love you, and I will see you next week. Brian, good to see you. Happy Friday. And Francine, good to see you.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday. Hey, Brian. Hey, Jose.
Hey, Casey.
All right, have a good weekend.
Bye.